Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out the special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
Hello, I'm Banana Chan. I believe this is, I don't know how many episodes it's been now.
Maybe more than five. I would say at least.
More than five. Yes. 5 plus episode.
I really enjoy our conversations. I love our conversation about horror and about mythology, and I've always learned something from our interviews. I'm very grateful for the time you give us to talk about all the amazing things you have worked on. And today we're going to talk about Revenant Society, with something that you
Yes.
co-created. So let's start at the beginning. How
Yeah.
did this project come to be?
Yeah, so Revenant Society is well, first of all, it is basically a tabletop role playing game. It's a PBTA, powered by the apocalypse style game that is about revenants. You're playing a revenant who is trying to uncover how you died and how it's related to a shattering event. Otherwise, if you can't solve the mystery behind all of that, then you are stuck in a time loop. And the game is set, it actually has two settings. The first setting is 1910s Paris, and then the other setting is 1920s New York. And the reason why we chose those two settings was because we were really influenced by the art of the time. So 1910s Paris was, Art Nouveau, and then 1920s New York was Art Deco. And so we just really wanted to play on those styles. And also, it was really much inspired by like the underground, right? Like the subway systems, the metro systems, and the catacombs of Paris. Just like the idea of like these old cities, these cities have been around for so long, and what are the messes that people get into living there.
When it comes to your projects, everything is always different. So I have to ask, like, did you just like talk to the other co-creator about some ideas and just say, hey, let's do this?
Yeah, so Sen Phun Lim is my co-designer on this. We were chatting a lot about like, what does it look like, right? Like, what is the next iteration of what we want to work on post Jean Chiblan the Banquet Hall? And this is something that came up after Jean Chiblan the Banquet Hall because we really enjoyed the 1920s setting. Just like learning more about the history, learning more about, what were people like back then, and also focusing it more on like average people. Like we really wanted the focus to be on like average people who were just thrown into strange settings, right? So this isn't something that's like you're a knight, or you're like someone who has like who was born with like these special abilities. You were basically thrown into the setting and thrown into the situation involuntarily. Like your character basically is thrown into a situation involuntarily, and how do you deal with that? How do you overcome that? How do you not survive because you're already dead, but how do you move on? And so a lot of this game is about trying to uncover your past, and also trying to move on, trying to figure out like what is the unsolved business that you have, what is the stuff that you want to try and tell maybe like your loved ones before you pass on to the next life. And so um, I think that where this game started from, it initially was supposed to be. So we were talking to Van Ryder about this. We were like, hanging out with Van Ryder, and we wanted to do something a little bit different because initially the first pitch was like, could we do like a hostage negotiator game based on like their board game Hostage Negotiator? And we were just like, let's play around with some ideas. And so it eventually evolved into the Revenant Society, where we were just like, but what if we did something else? Like, what if we did something that was like, undead? What if we did something that was like in a setting that we're excited about? What if we did something that's like completely different and new? And that's how this came to be.
Hmm. So let's talk about the what this project is exactly. You mentioned it's a role playing game using Powered by the Apocalypse system, but
Yes.
there's also like a box set, and it has all these
Yes.
intricate pieces and tools. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. So the core of the game is a Powered by the Apocalypse system. So Powered by the Apocalypse, it's based on Apocalypse World, which is by Vincent and Maggie Baker. They're incredible designers, and without them, this wouldn't be a thing. But along with that, we also added a few extra rules. So the main extra rule that we added was the time loop board. And so in the box set, it comes with a time loop board. Um, and the time loop board helps the GM keep track of what's going on, what are the different events that are happening. So there are two main timelines to keep track of. The first one is the timeline of the culprit, and so this is the stuff that they're going through. They're actually going to do all the different things that they're going to do, and that's fixed. So that's a fixed line of events. The second line of events is the stuff that basically you all make up around the table. So like what's going to happen, during the first time loop. Okay, once that first time loop, you go through all of the stuff in these locations, that is fixed. You have just created that. And so the next time you go to those locations in the second time loop or the third time loop or the fourth or whatever, those events are going to happen again if you are in those same locations. So if you go to, Times Square, for example, and you see like a group of people who are drunk and rowdy and they're about to start a fight, at I don't know, like let's say midnight, right? Like say that happens at midnight. The next time you go back to that same spot at midnight, you're going to see those same people, drunk and rowdy, having a fight. And we wanted to make sure that, like, it was relatively easy for the GM to keep track of all of these events because it's pretty hard to like make sure that you can get all the timelines and different events straight out. So we wanted to be visual. We wanted to have a board so that way the GM can keep track of all of that stuff. Along with that, we also have another board for keeping track of the different NPCs. So, because the Revenants themselves don't actually remember a lot, we have a deck of NPCs and just like items in general. And so, players would draw from that deck and create stories based around that deck. So, say for example, they draw a card, they see a picture of a person. Who is that person to them? Is it someone who was like a loved one who, was a big impact on them in their life or something like that? Or maybe they like, broke up suddenly right before that person's death. Now they're like, motivated to like try and find them and try and talk to them. So there's that, or maybe there's some items that are on the cards. Like some of the cards have items on them. So for example, like maybe it could be like I'm going to use a candelabra as like an example, right? Maybe that's like a murder weapon. Maybe that's like the thing that killed you, or maybe that's like, something that's representative of a social group that you were a part of. Maybe they use candelabras as like an icon for their social group, and it's somehow related to this big shattering event that would disrupt, the time loop that you're suddenly trapped in. And so yeah, we wanted to provide as many tools as possible, as many visual tools as possible for the GM to keep track of all of this stuff because there's a lot of stuff.
So why did you decide to use the Powered by the Apocalypse system? What is it about the system that you felt that it works for this game?
Yeah, I think that for me, I'll speak on behalf of myself. Like personally, I love the Powered by the Apocalypse system. Like, the storytelling aspects are really what excite me. I think that it facilitates quick and easy sort of like role playing, right? And so, like, if say a character, a player is like stuck in a situation, they can easily come up with answer some questions and be like, oh, this is what happened back when I had a relationship with this person, um, before my death, like a year before my death. And, this person was really important to me. And, all these things happened because you have these questions, you have these prompts. So that way, you're never feeling like you're stuck when it comes to like trying to figure out, like, what's the next thing I'm going to do.
The time loop mechanic for this, I'm really intrigued by it. I love time loops. I could watch like the worst time travel movie out there and I'll enjoy it because it has time travel in it. Um, so the idea of time loops really fascinate me, especially in a game. How did it work exactly? So let's say you're not able to solve the mystery in time and
Mhm.
you're at the end of the loop. How does the game work when the loop begins or
Yeah.
re-begins?
Yeah, so there are well, starting with the time loop. So there when you first enter the time loop, what happens is you wake up in the metro or the subway. And so that's where your bodies are because that's, underground, that's where your bodies are decaying. That's what sort of like what we were thinking of when we first when we first start the game. And so you wake up, you're in the subway system, you have to get out and you have to figure out like, where to go from there. So you can either like, hang out in that subway, the subway stop that you wake up at, or you can choose like another spot to go to. And so that's how it's sort of related to like the whole subway system type of thing. Um, so as you're going through like the game, there are two ways that the time loop can end. The first way is if the time loop ends. The sun starts rising and it's like the next day. So all of this takes place at night, and because you're revenants, it's like a little bit shadier. It's a little bit more of like that paranormal, or that's supernatural sort of vibe to it. So that's the first way it ends, when the sun starts rising. The second way it ends is if your character, because your character's revenants again, you are undead, your bodies are fragile, they have been decaying for some time. If all three of your health slots have basically been filled in, so basically, as you're taking damage, you're you only have like three damage that you can take before you die, or quote unquote die. You just like crumble into dust basically, and that ends the time loop for literally the entire group. So all the players must go back to the beginning of the time loop where you're waking up in the subway system and you're just like, what's going on? But the second time you do the time loop, or the next time you do the time loop, you have more questions to answer because you remember more stuff. And so you have new questions, you're answering these new questions, and you have any items that you collected from the first time loop, you no longer have on you. However, if you did have items on you when you woke up the first time, like when you just like have them on your body, like they're just items that you have forever, those are still there with you, but they might have returned back to their original form.
Is it similar to Groundhog Day where your memories, you still have your memories in a sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, all your memories stay intact. Everything pretty much stays intact. The only thing that's not, uh, like, not, I guess like affected is like the stuff around you, right? So the events around you are still unfolding as they would in the first time loop, or the multiple times that you do the time loop, right? Like it's just going to be the same stuff going over and over again. But you yourself retain all those memories. You yourself also have like the item that you came into the world with.
I really like the New York City and the Paris maps you have on here. When
Yeah.
did you have to do a lot of research for this? Did you find out anything interesting in your research for these two cities and two time periods?
Yes. It was very interesting doing the research for this. So I used to live in New York, so I knew where to like get a lot of my resources. I still talk to like a bunch of people who were familiar with the history, and we sort of went through, just trying to figure out like, yeah, what was it like back then? And we got a lot of good demographic information. However, for Paris, it's a little bit harder to get information on demographics just because I think it's like the way that they do their census is like a little bit different. And so it was harder for us to get information on demographics that way. But we did talk to a historian who managed to help us like find a little bit more information on the history of Paris back in the day. And I would say that the most interesting things were how artists and poets treated the cities that they lived in respectively, like how they write about them, right? As an example, there is this one subway station, metro station called Denfer Rochereau that was basically coined as a place of hell, so Place d'Enfer. Um, and it's really just like interesting that like people would call, these different like metro stops, different things because of the way that was just like so packed. It was so crowded. It's like similar to like your day to day commute now, where it's like, going through the subway is hell, and it's like things don't change. So that was really interesting to me.
Antagonists in this story. Now, I mean,
Yes.
I don't want to talk about the uh, the what the mystery is. That's I don't want to spoil anything. But I'm curious if there what else does this like game offer for tools for the game master? Are there like other like entities are trying to stop you?
Yes.
How do the ghosts interact with the living? Is it like kind of like Beetlejuice where they have some
Yeah.
difficulty?
Yeah, absolutely. So, before we get into antagonists, I'm going to start with allies. So, you have one ally who is Greta. She is a administrative assistant with like a lavender cardigan who likes to file her nails, and she basically is the person that. She's a demon, by the way. She's the demon that greets you as you are in hell, right? So you're in the waiting room, you're in like the limbo area, sort of like what you said, like in Beetlejuice, where, when you're doing your character creation, you're literally doing paperwork in hell, in limbo. And you're called upon by Greta, who's like behind this glass case, because she's like, when you think about the DMV, like, there are numbers that pop up. And when your number pops up, she'll call on you and she'll be like, hey, like, what's your paperwork? And then she'll go through your paperwork, and then she'll be like, okay, you're going through this door, you're going to go back into Paris or New York or wherever, whichever setting that you are playing in. And as you're going through the game, anytime you need assistance, anytime it feels like the players are getting a little bit stuck, the GM can use Greta as a way to basically call the players. So there'll be like next to a phone box or something like that, and the phone would start ringing out of nowhere. Are the players expecting a call? Are the characters expecting a call? Probably not. But if they pick it up, then on the other end is Greta. And so Greta would be able to push them along the story and give them a little bit of like give them a little bit of guidance on where to go next. So she's one of the entities that the characters might encounter. But when it comes to the antagonists, there are two main antagonists. So the first one is the culprit who caused the shattering event. So the shattering event is like this big timeline changing event. So it could be an assassination, it could be destruction of art, it could be something like that, right? And so this culprit is basically who the players or the characters are trying to stop. And somehow that culprit is also related to the revenant's deaths. And so how the characters died are somehow in one shape or form, it's all related to that culprit. You as the GM might not know how they died or like, how it's all related. Players definitely do not know. And throughout this game, you're just building on the story and creating this mystery and like unraveling this mystery together. So that's how it sort of works when it comes to the storytelling. The second antagonist is the Watchers. And so the Watchers are these entities that are without spoiling it too much, they are creatures that have somehow uh, ended up in limbo before their time. And so um, maybe they're not supposed to be in limbo. Maybe they're not supposed to be, they somehow manifested through jealousy or rage or, something else like that. And so these watchers, because they are jealous of the revenants for having like a second chance, they're trying to pull them back, trying to make sure that they don't complete the tasks that they have before them, and they want the time loop to keep resetting and keep uh, basically keeping the revenants like in the time loop so that way the events will move forward as they want them to.
That's really interesting. It's almost like you created your own mythology. Um,
Yes.
that it sounds like it's its own thing. Did that mythology come first before the mystery for you, or was it first the mystery and then like this mythology I have to create it so that it makes sense for the game? How, if I may ask, how did that come about?
Yeah, so the Watchers were actually from Sen. So Sen decided like, hey, why don't we add like an extra layer? And so we were chatting, and he was like, what about adding like these weird ghostly things? Let's add some Watchers into it. And so as we were developing the concept of the Watchers, um, this is sort of related, a little bit of a spoiler, so I'm just gonna say it out there. But like the Watchers are essentially um, culprits from previous time loops who perhaps maybe were killed or pulled into limbo or whatever. So that's what the Watchers are basically. They're just like their previous culprits. That's it. Yeah. And so, and they could be other creatures as well. Like they could be other things as well. They don't necessarily have to just be culprits, or old culprits or previous culprits or whatever. But like it could be anything really. It's up to like the players how they want to handle it. But essentially when we were talking about it, we were just like, let's add an extra layer to it. Let's add something that's like, that'll make things a little bit more difficult for the players when they go through the time loops, and make it a little bit spookier, like make it a little like weirder. And so that's how the Watchers came into being.
Tools for the game. Now, I know for myself, I'm speaking from my own experience. Sometimes with certain groups, mysteries tend to go off the rails big time.
Mhm.
Sometimes they'll pick an option Z to do for their characters, and they just
Yeah.
next thing you know they're halfway across the world doing something I did not plan.
Hmm.
Um, does does this is there are the tools in here to help um, uh, control that, or
Yes.
is the mystery very open ended? What do you have exactly?
Yeah, so the mystery itself, I would say that the players might feel like it's actually very open-ended, but in reality, it's not. There are guardrails. So the guardrails are definitely like the fixed timeline. So the fixed timeline is one guardrail that we put in place. The second one is just like the fact that you have to keep going back, um, to your spots. Like there are so many spots that are on the map. Like uh, each setting comes with its own map. You can only go to so many places, and you have to travel as a group. You can't split the party. So that's another thing. But you can split the party if you're like in the same location. So say for example, you're at like, Union Square, 14th Street Union Square, right? Like if you're there, then you can like, one group can go to the bar and the other group can go to, the I don't know, another spot somewhere. But you always have to be in the same sort of location. And so that way you're moving together as a group to the next location. Um, there's that. The moves also have a clock attached to them. So the clock works in a way where anytime you use a move, you mark the clock that's on the board, so that way you can keep track of time, or at least that's how the GM keeps track of time. Because once the clock is filled, then you move on to the next segment of time. So it could be like 9 to 12, and then 12 to 3, or whatever, right? It's all listed on the board. So I feel like it's actually got a lot of guardrails. There are also additional guardrails that we put in place, like the questions. The questions aren't necessarily leading, but they are very much like, okay, this is what we're presenting you as a question. Uh, when you answer it, it feels like you're answering, whatever you want to answer, but at the same time, it's just like, okay, like these are very fixed. These are like very specific to like the world that we're building. So I think that players might feel a sense of like I can do whatever I want in this world, but there's actually there are a lot of like guardrails that the GM has as tools.
Hmm. And I assume it's been a while since I played a Powered by Apocalypse game, but I assume this has like playbooks for character
Yes.
creation and things like that. Okay.
The box set has a bunch of characters. They're all like dry erase characters. It's also character sheets, playbooks, and they also come with dry erase markers.
And this is available digitally also. I thought I saw something on Drive to RPG about this project as well.
Yes, I believe the Revenant Society is available on Drive Through RPG through the Van Ryder page. So yeah, it should be on there somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's online.
Well, excellent. This sounds like an amazing project. Um, is there anything
Yeah.
more about this that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
Oh, one thing I can say is that we asked Julie for permission to basically say that this is set in the same universe as Junction, and she was like, "Yeah, sure, that would be really cool." And so we're like, "Yes, like this is set in the same universe." So canonically, we're like Revenant Society, Junction, uh, same weird space. Uh, but yeah, if players want to make it open ended, that's totally fine. We don't care. Uh, but for me personally, I'm just like, this is the same universe for sure.
So, if I may ask, what's your favorite time travel? I know we talked about favorite horror movies before previously, but what
Oh,
about time travel?
so Triangle is actually one of my favorites. So Triangle is about, but it's so here's the thing. It's not really time travel, and that sort of gives away a little bit of the spoiler. So I'm not gonna give away too much, but Triangle is definitely inspiration for the Revenant Society as well. It's about a woman who goes on a like a yacht cruise. It's not really a yacht. It's more like a boating thing, like a those like smaller ships. It's not like a cruise ship, but it's like a smaller ship. But she goes away to sea with some of her friends. They go out and have like a weekend getaway or whatever, and then a storm happens, and they're trying to get help, and they find a giant cruise ship, and they get on the giant cruise ship trying to see if there's like anyone who can help them. But it seems like it's abandoned. But it turns out there's a killer on the loose in the cruise ship. Uh, that's the first part of the movie. The second part goes completely bonkers, and I will not explain more than that, but it is one of my favorite movies. Triangle is up there. Coherence is another. Coherence is like, um, it's basically like the best way for me to describe it is a LARP, like it's a recorded LARP, because behind the scenes, the movie actually wasn't that expensive to make because they just used the same house over and over again, and I think they shot it within like I don't know, like 3 weeks or something ridiculous like that. But essentially, all the actors were given prompts, but they weren't given like a full script. And so the entire thing was just like ad libbed, and they did it over and over and over again, right? And you'll see that that's it's why it's important, because as you're watching the movie, you're just like, oh, that makes actually a lot of sense that they would just like do the same thing but a different way over and over again. um it really fits with the theme of like the movie. But Coherence is up there for me. It's sci-fi, it's horror, it's incredible. And I don't know how to explain it without people watching the movie, so I'm just like, let's go see it.
That's the interesting thing about time travel movies. There's always a mystery involved that if it's done well enough, it'll grab onto you. But maybe I shouldn't say that. But there's certain really silly time travel movies I've seen, and I just love it because it's time travel. It's just like Sound of Thunder. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie version. The short story version, incredible. Ray Bradbury is amazing. But that movie, oh man, the graphics are terrible. The acting is questionable, but I love it. And I don't know why. It's just I don't know, something about messing around with time always intrigues me. Um,
Yeah. It's super fun. I love it. I love, like, the idea of just, like, c like, the whole, like, idea of it being, like, Sisyphean.
mm.
I just, like, totally butchered that word, but, like, that idea of, like, you're the only person who knows what's going on and you're stuck here. Like, that's such a lonely and isolating experience that I find, like, really intriguing.
Yeah, I think there's a we as human beings have really a hard time dealing with regret. I think also,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I know for myself, I always think back like, oh, why did I do this? Couldn't I have done this instead? And then,
Yeah.
of course, my mind thinks about, okay, if I would have done that, then I would have not met this person, and it just keeps going these avenues. And I'm really intrigued by that. I don't know why. It's, I guess it's just part of the mystery thing. It's like I want to know where it goes at the end.
Right. Yeah.
But Yes, the Revenant Society. Viewers, I'll put the links below in the description for Direct to RPG and to Fan Rider Games so that you can purchase a physical copy if your local gaming store does not have this. Banana, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. This is sounds like a really fantastic project. It seems so intriguing on the website, and it really hooked me in by hearing you talk about it. There's so many wonderful possibilities of storytelling to do with this. You know, it's
Thank you.
but yes, again, I'll put links in the description below. Viewers and listeners, thank you so much for taking the time to check us out. Be safe out there. We'll see you next time.
Yay. Thank you. Bye.